Okay, hello everybody. I am Sun Psychic Jean, and please welcome my very special guest today, Helen Irish Granny Tarot. Hi, Helen.
Hi, Jean, and thank you for inviting me. I love invitations. Thank you very much. This is great. It's an honor to be on your show.
Oh, that's so sweet of you. I was on your show recently, and you did an amazing job asking me very interesting questions, and I just knew I would.
I'm so nosy. I'm just nosy. Do you remember Mrs. Kravitz?
I do.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's me. I'm always looking out the curtain.
Well, you do it with such heart and you do it with such respect and genuine inquiring about, you really do want to know about somebody's life, somebody's thoughts, somebody's perspective. You do it in a genuine manner, which makes it so much, so beautiful. I really enjoy that. And I love watching all of your other interviews. That's why I felt very comfortable being one on your channel. So today we're going to flip the scene a little bit, and we're going to have you be the be the one who I'm going to be not interviewing, just having a little chat, and getting so that my viewers can get to know Helen. And her information is below in the description box. If anybody hasn't already subscribed, please do go over and subscribe to Helen Irish Granny Tarot. You will not be disappointed. She has amazing information and just a wealth of many different subjects on her channel. So to begin with, and we were just talking backstage a little bit, you were talking about your family, and how many brothers and sisters do you have?
I am the oldest of 12. I have 6 brothers and 5 sisters.
Wow, I didn't know it was even. Wow, look at that. That's
Yeah, and it was
amazing.
always every year we had a new baby. And every year we clustered around the phone waiting to hear, and half the family would cheer and the other half would be disappointed.
That's so funny. That is so funny. And how many you have a couple of children. How many children do you have?
5. I have 5
That
girls.
and that's all girls.
Oh,
Wow.
of course. Yes, of course.
Well, that's a beautiful household. I can't imagine what it was like around their teenage years, right?
Don't remind me. I've locked it into my subconscious. I can't remember any of it. It's a blur. It's I'm not entirely joking. There's a period of time between 1981 and about 2010 that I'm hard pressed to be specific about what happened when. I was either pregnant or nursing, or pregnant and nursing, and had toddlers and young children, grade school children, and we homeschooled. And it was a 3-ring circus here for 25 years. They're spread out in age. I had my
Wow.
youngest when I was 43.
Wow.
So they're really spread out. Yeah. And
Wow.
it was intentionally.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I come from a family of 5 sisters and 2 brothers. And but it was a little bit different. My mother had the first 6 children in 7 years. And then she waited 3 years for the last one. And I know. So I'm number 6. So I was the baby for 3 years, and then my little sister came, but she's a blessing to the whole family. She's the diplomat of the family. But I do remember growing up with all my sisters that everybody was just stealing each other's clothes and just hollering about the chores in the house, and it was quite lively, and lots of boyfriends, lots of proms and things like that. And it was a lot of fun. With being one of the younger ones, I benefited from all of my sisters sort of, paving the way for me. Like, you're not allowed to date until you're. And when it came to me, they're like, "Oh, you're going out on a date. See ya."
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly what it was like. I'm convinced that you're a different parent for each of your children, that the dynamic of the relationship plays into it, the age of the child in relationship to other siblings, the birth order matters, your age matters, and your experience. And I know I was different with my children, and oh my God, my parents. I mean, yeah, it was a whole thing. I don't talk about it a whole lot. I feel like there's a lot of work still to be done. Let's put it that way. My parents have both died, but all of my siblings are still alive, and it's a whole thing. Just put it like that. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. So do you feel like my oldest sister still acts like my mother? She's 7 years older than me. So, or yeah. And she's still not acts like my mother. She still is motherly to me, you know.
Mhm, mhm.
And she always has this responsibility, double checking and calling and asking.
Yeah.
She's always the responsible one because she's used to being in that mode. Do you feel the same, that you've been sort of raising kids your whole life because you were the oldest of all your siblings?
Well, I was babysitting when I was 5. Babysitting, I mean, literally alone in the house with a newborn and a toddler when I was 5. Just, make sure nobody moves from that chair now. Back in a little while. Yeah.
That's what they
And
did.
spent my whole entire childhood being responsible for a number of younger siblings. Today, no, because there's a lot of estrangement. And so I don't get asked about anything. But my husband tells me I think I'm his mother.
Aw.
He can't get rid of that attitude. He'll say, you're not my mother, right? So yes, you do cling to that role. It's ingrained. And birth order is very powerful. I see it in my own kids. I see it in my husband's family. He's one of 5. He's the middle of 5. And yeah, it's absolutely his oldest sister, who's 80 years old, is still calling him and chastising him about things.
Mhm,
So,
mhm.
yeah.
So how did being the oldest of 12 children prepare you for the rest of your life? How would you say this enhanced or informed or benefited you throughout your life?
Well, I was never having children and I was never getting married. I was turning my back and walking away from all that nonsense, and I was not going to be chained to that. And then I met my husband, and it was like overnight, okay, well, I really want to do this. So I can't
Wow.
explain it. I do believe it's karmic. I'll put it this way. With my own children, I wanted to change a pattern,
Yeah.
and I intentionally tried to work on that. And as a result, my daughters, who are all adults, are in a non-pathological way, they're each other's best friends. They
Oh,
really are close, really, really close. They go off together a weekend every year for a sister weekend, and just, which is, I can no more imagine doing that with any of my siblings. So I feel like,
oh.
so in that regard, yes, it made a gigantic difference. There was something I was going to tell you had happened that was so funny. It'll come to me. I can't remember now, but it was so funny that it did have an effect. It makes you more responsible at a younger age, and that filters into other aspects of your life. You're I think as an older sibling, especially an older sister, you're more inclined to be uh, at a paying job younger. You're more inclined to feel responsible to do just stupid things around the house. You sort of feel like if you don't do them, nobody will. And then that establishes a pattern. Um, you feel responsible for things like orchestrating the social life of the larger family, the broader family group. Yeah. So a lot of subtle
Wow.
ways that you might not recognize that it does affect.
Wow. It's informational. It's a both a blessing and can be challenging at the same time. But I think that when we come into this world and into this incarnation, we are here and in our roles for a reason, and that
Yeah.
these lessons that we learn throughout our life are to inform us and elevate or evolve our souls. And I feel that with this knowledge and with this, even if it's that I don't want to do that, or I saw all that and I lived through that, and that's not what I want to do with my own family, even if it's that change and that awareness and that, being able to live through that and then to make a choice to change that, I think that that's really interesting that that it would benefit you in that way to make your own choices.
Well, I think it's evidence, I think when you look back on your childhood and you say, I didn't want to do those sorts of things, repeat those, or I do want to do things as I found them in my childhood. I think that's evidence that you get born into what you get born into as lessons. And maybe you do learn, maybe you don't, but you certainly have the opportunity to pick up lessons. I remember the story. This is actually really funny. So you asked me how being the oldest child with all those siblings affected my life. Well, so we decided to have children, right away. And we had our daughter, and she was the one and only daughter, the one and only child that we had that was born in the hospital. And it was because she was born within 3 hours of me getting there. And it was just it was ridiculous. It was a little bit like watching the Keystone Cops run around in a panic. They didn't know what to do because they couldn't find my doctor. And so she was just born. And so the next day we were getting out of Dodge. We just wanted out of this place. They just don't seem like they have their finger on the pulse. You know what I mean? And so the nurse came in and handed me paperwork or something. And she said, "Oh, you're good to go. You guys can go home." And off she went. So I was still in the, nightgown. And so I said to my husband, "Here, you take the baby. Here's her clothes. You put her clothes on. I'm going to go in the bathroom," because they're sharing a room. "I'm going to go into the bathroom and change, and I'll be right out." And the look of utter panic on his face was just, I'll never forget it. It's been over 40 years. He had, I guess I didn't know this. He'd never really dealt with a newborn. He didn't know what end was what. And I laughed at him. I said, "Never mind, I'll do it." Within a week, he was just with all the confidence in the world. He was very willing, but the sheer terror of that moment will stay with me
and the
forever.
assumption on your part, of course, you would know. Like, who doesn't know?
How
As
could
you
you
were
not know?
assuming. Yeah.
It's very funny.
Yeah. Yeah. I've definitely been blessed with all my nieces and nephews and being able to take care of them and having them as a practice for me, and it is something that you grow accustomed to, but if you're away from it for a little while, it is a little, you have to sort of remember again,
Oh, I never
I
got
don't know,
the
maybe.
opportunity to be away from it. My youngest sister was born when I was almost at college. So, I took my daughter card shopping. My daughter was a year old, and we went to get a birthday card for my youngest sister. And I couldn't find a card that said "Happy Birthday to my dear aunt" on her 5th birthday.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah. I'm curious, did your sisters all have children, or, like the ones who wanted to, did they all have children?
Yes.
They did. Okay.
Yes.
So you've had tons of nieces and nephews.
I do. I do. And they're just a true blessing. And I think they call me their rent-a-mom. And I'm really close to a couple of my nieces and nephews. Not all of them, but many of them.
That's so nice.
Everybody's an individual. So what advice, do you have like a favorite piece of advice that you'd like to share with people that, what piece of advice that you've learned throughout your life that you feel is important to share with other people? Like, do you say, I don't know. Do you have any type of advice that would be your favorite kind of advice? Like never say never, or,
I don't know. I feel like I'm in the process of learning. I mean, I have not in any way accumulated anything that I need to know. I'm still working on it. So every day, something new. I do know that ultimately all things coalesce in the center with one small intersection, which is love one another. And that sounds, I always say that sounds so easy, you know, love one another. Okay, that was easy. Throw away the other 9 commandments, you know, that's easy, right? But it's the hardest thing in the world to do. And we have to just make that our focus every day and then forgive ourselves at the end of the day. It's really difficult.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
do have a philosophy by which I live. I don't usually share this because it's my Eeyore side of my personality, but you know, life sucks. Life on earth is really hard, and then you die. So you have to be a realist about it and understand that what happens has a purpose, and so does death. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, this is an Earth school, and we're here to learn, and we're here to have catalysts that push up against us and make us feel uncomfortable, uneasy, in order for us to grow and to, learn. And that's not for everybody, but a lot of us. And I always say, try not to judge somebody else. You don't know about their life. You haven't walked a day in their shoes. You don't
Yeah.
know where they came from or what made them that way. So try not to judge people, just, love them and send them on their way. And it doesn't mean that you condone their behavior or that you understand why they're doing what they're doing, but you really can't judge unless you walked in their shoes, lived their life, brought up the way they were brought up, dealt with everything that they dealt with. And it's not for us to understand or to compare. It's just for us to, accept and send them love.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, but I think it's a fine line for, I know a lot of us, a lot of us struggle with not judging. And I think it's a fine line because we get tossed up against these people that mystify us or horrify us or puzzle us. And that has a purpose too, because what we're doing is we're being shown this is how not to be, or this is how you should be, or and to not judge them, it's human nature. And so we struggle against our biology, our human nature. A lot of that is biologically driven because it's how, in a society of mammals, it's how we survived in the past, and that part of our brain is always right there talking to us, you know. But I like to remind myself, can I use Trump as an example?
Yeah, sure.
You know, it's horrifying. It to watch it is just, you have to look away. It's so hard and so difficult to understand. And all of us, I'm sure, most of us anyway, have this overwhelming desire to do nothing but judge and point fingers. And, and I do, God knows I do it myself all the time. But I have to remind myself, this man is a lesson in compassion. First of all, even the worst of us are put here for the benefit of other people. Even if it's bad, it's for the benefit of other people. How would we know how not to be if we didn't see people being the worst, right? So he, somewhere before he was born, he volunteered for this horrible position, and it was an opportunity for him. Make some choices, and maybe you'll work off the balance, balance your karma. Not to judge or anything, but I don't think he's doing a very good job. But in the meantime, we need to maintain that compassion, because this man is a 2-year-old. He was traumatized at the age of 2. His mother almost died. He was abandoned at a formative period in his life. That's when you make empathetic connections. That's when you bond with people. That's how you learn. I'm doing a book right now about trauma in childhood and how it eventually shows up as illness in adulthood. It's really interesting. And it's gotten to, they're learning so much about it at this point that they can look at it. For example, you go to the doctor and you've got symptoms and they tell you, okay, this is an autoimmune disorder, but we can't figure out why you have it. You don't really have the genetic markers, and you haven't been exposed. We cannot figure out why you have it. Now they know to ask the next question. When you were 6 months old, 12 months old, tell me about that. Did this particular abuse or neglect or separation happen to you? Because they can tell from the symptoms what happened when.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
mind-blowing, really mind-blowing. Not all the time, but they're getting a grip on that and they're learning more about it. So
Yeah.
to have compassion for other people because you don't know where they're stuck, you know. He's a 2-year-old, a
Hmm.
perpetual
Right.
2. If you've
Right.
ever lived with a 2-year-old, it's a nightmare. We're living a national nightmare, you know.
Yeah, it's not a perfect science, and it's not always easy to express. But I had one woman that I worked with for several years, and she was just she was just a terror, and a really major catalyst and stressor for myself that I was, having symptoms from my, anxiety and nervousness and stress around there, and, felt at the edge of my rope, when you have that edge that you just can't take one more thing or
Yeah,
else it'll
you
be
feel
the
raw,
straw.
like hanging on
Yeah.
your fingernails. Yeah.
Exactly, very raw. So she pushed me to that brink, and she was my direct supervisor, and she was not well, imbalanced, and was a chronic liar. And she would say, the picture is round. The picture is round. I'm telling you, the picture is round. And then in the same sentence, she would say, I told you the picture was a rectangle. And I'm like, what? Like, you just said it was like, how could you just, and she pretends like she said
Deny.
rectangle the whole
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And it was, I mean, and that's just, I mean, it's not, it's that she was so much, she always, she obviously threw everything on me and blamed me and put all the pressure and the workload on me. And, I was the low man on the totem pole. I had to do it. And my coworkers around me would say, why do you put up with that? And I said, somebody must have treated her the way that she's treating me. She didn't just come out like this. She learned this behavior, and she doesn't know what she's doing. She just is doing what somebody else did to her. And I said, I developed this way of just letting her know that I disagree. And I never said that it was right, it was wrong, you're doing it wrong, I just said I disagree. And it was a non-confrontational way out, but I did have the support of everybody else in the office, and they all knew that she was, very, very disorganized and very had a personality disorder. But
Yeah.
she
I'm gonna
taught me.
say that's exactly
Mhm.
right. You're very kind and you're very generous to say she was t- learned that way through trauma. Some people are born that way.
Yeah,
I'm
she
sorry, I
could have
interrupted
been.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, but I learned that she was there in my life to show me how far I could be pushed, first of all, and how resilient I can be, and how strong and compassionate I truly am. And for me to come up from that, and for to have that strength of saying I disagree, and to be able to feel confident and strong and know that my mind is balanced and hers is not, and just that compassion, just that way of changing it, like diffused the situation, and it gave me the control and the power, and she didn't know what to do with it. And it
Yeah.
was because I was listening to a book about Buddhism and about the Buddhist way and about the practice of compassion, and to thank our enemies. And I'm like, what? Thank our enemies? No way. I got one for you. I was like just screaming about her every single day. But when I learned that she was there in my life to help me find my strength, my compassion, to help my soul grow, it changed so much for me. I remember who I was before that moment, and I am now a different person because of that lesson that I learned. And that's one of my favorite pieces of advice, is to try not to try to approach things with some empathy and some amount of understanding. Not that it's right, not that you condone it, not that you want them to continue. Just a little bit of perspective to empower yourself as well.
You know, this is one reason why I love talking to you. Every time I do, I learn something that I need to know. I know that I need to learn that. I've known my whole life, believe me, it's gotten me into trouble, that this is something I need to know. And you articulate it so beautifully. You've got such a grip on it. Yes, that's exactly the kind of skill we're supposed to be developing. That's why people like Donald Trump exist, to teach us these lessons. I guess we have a lot of homework to do right now.
It's about us. It's never about them. It's about us, because we are projecting these things in our life to teach us, to help us to grow, to help our soul evolve. It's always about us. It's never about the other person, or the catalyst, I should say.
I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that. I think it's like an onion. On one level, you're absolutely right. And I 100% agree. It's completely about what we're supposed to be learning from them, their purpose in our lives. But there's also another layer where they're supposed to be getting something from it. And they're supposed to be making choices and learning lessons. And they either are or they aren't taking the path that's going to be karmically the most advantageous. But that's why it's so hard on Earth, because it is like an onion. So many people, so many layers, so much free will, so many choices, so many bad options. And that's why we keep coming back. I think I've probably been reincarnated about 50 million times. It's just a slow learner, you know. It's just so difficult. And the story goes that souls jockey for the opportunity to come here. You know,
Yeah.
it's like
Oh, yeah.
elbowing each other out of the way somewhere, you know.
It's a lottery. We have to wait in line. Yeah.
Yeah. So we should, I keep trying to remind myself of that. Hey, you chose this. You begged for this. Don't be careful what you ask for, because now here you are, you know. Yeah.
It's just a little bit of perspective. And that little bit of perspective gives us the information that allows us to be in power rather than be in the victim.
And I think it really drives home for me the wisdom and the understanding of psychology that ancient mystery schools have, a ancient Buddhist belief. That's a really sophisticated understanding of how the human brain works and how people interact socially. That's very sophisticated. And they were teaching that thousands of years ago, you know, in some form or another. That fascinates me.
It does. It does. It's amazing. And you know, it was a choice for my soul to either learn the lesson or to keep perpetuating the same situation until I learn the lesson.
I know. I know.
So I chose to learn it. So let's move on to something a little bit different. Do you have what are your goals for the future? Do you have any goals that you are looking forward to accomplishing, or what is it that you would like to accomplish in the future?
Well, I achieved a big goal this year. That's something that I've been, I'm going to get around to it, you know, for decades. I stopped eating meat.
Wow.
For a variety of different reasons, but that was a big goal, and it was a struggle because basically I'm a glutton. That's my favorite deadly sin. And so there was an effort, but it actually has proven to not be, and it's fine. What the hard part of it is making substitute choices that don't have 5 times the calories. Little did I know, but that's a whole other story. What would I want to learn or to do? My goals in the future. Well, I feel, okay, don't take this the wrong way, because I'm not looking at it from a negative thing at all. But I can hear the clock ticking. You know, I'm 70, I'm almost 71, and I can hear the clock ticking. And I am fully cognizant that time is drawing near for me. And I regret that I didn't start getting serious about a lot of ideological, you know, things, metaphysical things when I was younger. But you have life phases, right? So this is the phase I'm in. So I'm kind of making up for lost time. So that's my goal, is to learn as much as I can and to evolve as much as I can with the limited amount of time that I have left. And like I said, it's kind of a race to the finish line.
Mm-hmm,
So I'm
mm-hmm.
always trying to learn more and find out about broader ideas, other ideas. And
Mm-hmm.
talk to people like you and realize, okay, I could behave better in that regard. So, you know,
Mhm.
it's still
It's
learning every day.
it's gaining perspective. It's not a judgment. And so when you say that, it's um, would you say that there was a accelerated awakening or an accelerated awareness in this phase in your life, or do you feel as though you had a little blip of interest in the metaphysical or the spiritual, and then it sort of like went dormant, and then you carried it here, and then another blip happened? Do you feel like in this point in time in your life, that there is like an accelerated opening and a rush towards this awareness of more spiritual information and understanding?
Yeah, I would, but I know to what I would describe it. It's because I've always had these interests. Even as a little girl, I was always reading about this kind of stuff and thinking about it, being fascinated about it. I remember a family friend who was elderly died, and my parents went to take care of their house while the widow was gone away doing something. And I can remember my parents having this conversation. Well, you know, she's only 6. She doesn't really understand about somebody being dead. And as we were driving, you know, to the house, and I can remember thinking, well, what are you talking about? I'm thinking in my head, of course I understand what that means. And having the confidence that when I got there, his spirit would still be there and I could talk in my head with him. So I've always been interested in it, but my time on this planet has been um, confined or constrained a bit just by the natural unfolding of adult life. You know, you have schooling you have to do, you have to work at McDonald's for a while. It's a humbling thing. And you know, you have all these things you have to do. And yes, you choose them, but they're important lessons. And so then you have a family, and all of that distracts because you don't have free time. I'm not the kind of person who can do 6 things at the same time. Some people are remarkably good at multitasking. When I was raising my children, you know, I worked, but I was my own boss, but I was raising my children. That was my focus. And now I can go to the bathroom by myself. It's wonderful. It's quiet. And I have all this downtime. It really is downtime to do with whatever I want. And I'm trying to take as much advantage of it as possible. And yes, this YouTube thing has really kind of pushed me into being more consistent about it.
It's much more acceptable, accessible, and available. All of the, I mean, they used to be in the self-help section, there used to be one shelf of all the books for metaphysical and spirituality. Now there's whole sections. And I feel as though there is a acceleration of the frequency and vibration on the planet, and the evolution of humanity is thrusting many humans forward to open up their awareness and to realize our true divinity. And through this, I felt I had a 25 years of education, but I do feel an acceleration of all of this information and the occurrences and experiences, and
Yeah.
my capacity for learning is just insatiable. It's really and it's because it's this time, this frequency, and
Mhm.
the availability all together. But I think that many people in our community are feeling the same, you know, the same kind of a flow to this information.
Well, I think we're benefiting from the fact of demographics. You know, my age group was the biggest age group of children, the baby boomers, you know. And so I think a lot of people, a higher number than would be typical, are facing mortality and being forced to look at metaphysical questions than would be ordinarily happening. And I think that uh, age group support, and there are a lot of people around us doing the same thing, and that creates reinforcement. I think that if you look at history, there have always been cyclical periods of people becoming more metaphysical, large, big
Oh,
populations of
that's right.
people.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And then there's a reaction and it stops, and then it gets better and then it stops. But it's like an upward spiral because every time that cycle comes around, we have a little more technology, a little bit more understanding of the universe, a little bit more weight of history that has taught us things behind us. And I do think slowly but surely we're getting there. I don't think this is it. I don't think we're all going to just evolve into these miraculous spirits, you know, because now we're doing the work. No, I think all of us are going to be struggling. We're going to do the best we can. Things will go around again, but eventually people will, you know, and on and on and on, and eventually right off the planet. But I don't think it's gonna happen, you know, in our lifetimes, but we're benefiting from the evolution and the acceleration of learning. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So what is, if I asked you, what do you know for sure, what would you say? And this is, I got it from Oprah. Oprah used to say, "What do you know for sure?" Something that you're certain about, and it could be
Well, I
anything.
know absolutely for sure we're not our physical bodies.
You said that just for my benefit.
No, that's really the only thing I do know for sure.
That's like my biggest soapbox. Yeah.
Really? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good. So I get an A.
That
a big sarcasm class.
That was divinely guided, that answer.
Oh, wow.
That's so
That's
beautiful.
exciting.
That's so beautiful. Thank you for confirming that and for the validation. Yeah.
Well, now, you know, what do I know? That's what I think I know. We're not our bodies. This is just a means of interaction.
That's amazing. Out of all the things that you could have possibly said, and you said that, which is really very close to my heart. For sure. That's what I want to show people. Yeah, that was lovely. Thank you. That we can end now. No, I'm kidding. That was beautiful. You could have saved it to the end. No. Edgar Casey. You read books about Edgar Casey, and he the ARE is not too far from me. It's a couple of states south of me.
Yeah, you're outside DC. Yeah. Yeah.
And I have always been really fascinated. But if I could ask you, what is maybe one thing that stood out to you that you remember about the books that you read about Edgar Casey and his life, that was something that either that you learned or was profound or something that you wanted to share?
Well, you know, I heard about Edgar Casey when I was in school, when I was in grade school. I read a couple of books about him, The Sleeping Prophet, and stuff when I was a child. And so I don't remember specifically what I read. I do remember him drawing maps of the United States for the future and being totally freaked out because where I lived was going to be underwater or on fire or both. I live in Southern California, you know. But I'll tell you a story about Edgar Casey that I find really fascinating.
Yeah.
So, you know, I do books and I stumbled on some books about a remote viewing in Egypt. And the man who led the project that successfully found archaeological sites, it's really remarkable, told me a story. I had him he's come and talked a couple of times on my channel. His name is Stefan Schwartz. And he told me this story that happened to him. His family had lived in Virginia, I believe, from the early 1600s. And they had all this land and still in the same old house. So he was a young man, and for some reason he was disgruntled and between jobs. And it wasn't an unemployment situation. It was waiting for the time to start for the next job, and was really looking forward to it. So he was sitting on the porch one day daydreaming, and it was a nice summer day. What?
No, that's what he did.
And while he was sitting there, he said it was a 10-mile dirt road from the house to the main road with unbroken fields, right? And while he was sitting there, a couple came walking up the road. And they were dressed, he said, like they'd stepped off the streets in Manhattan. Very, you know, sophisticated and urban wear, you know, not for a country road. A young man and a young woman. And he said the young woman, he couldn't help but noticing, was particularly attractive. And so he was really kind of interested in her. Long story short, they said, we were sent here to give you this address to talk to this person. And, you know, you can come with us. But if you don't want to, if you could get yourself there, this would be, he really wants to talk to you. He'd never heard of the place. He'd never heard of the man. And he had no idea what they were talking about. So he's killing time at home the next couple of days. And he thought, well, you know, that girl was really cute. Maybe I will go just because I got nothing to do. So it turns out it's Edgar Casey's teaching place. What I can't remember what it was called. It's
A-R-E. I
AR.
don't, yeah.
And he had never heard of Edgar Casey. He had no idea. He asked to speak. Some guy was fixing something on a ladder. May I speak to John Smith? And he said, oh, well, there's somebody in there that'll talk to you. Long story short, he had recently finished working with the National Geographic, and he had been studying I think it was Alexandria. I think it was about his remote viewing to Alexandria. I could be wrong about that, but it's not all that important. They gave him a tour, and they took him into a big room full of bookshelves, and it was crammed ceiling to floor in these green folders. And inside were all the sessions handwritten by the secretary, right? So he says, well, what is all this? And they told him, and they said, you can, you know, help yourself. You can read any of them you want. You can read as much as you want. So he, at random, walked over to the shelf, pulled a book off the shelf, opened it, and it was Edgar Casey's sessions about Alexandria or whatever Stefan had been working on.
Oh
So
my
he lived
God.
there. He lived there for the next 5 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. How
Wow.
about that? Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. I thought you were going to tell me that they stepped out of time, the man and the woman,
Well,
when he was daydreaming, I
yeah.
thought that's what Edgar Casey did, you know,
Yeah.
that's
He
where,
thinks they did. He said he never met them. He didn't connect with them again. He just sort of randomly was handed from person to person. They all seemed to know he was coming. They all seemed to know him and want him there. But these two people were like emissaries, like the angel Gabriel shows up, you know, out of time and place. It was very odd. He said at the time he knew there was something odd about it. In retrospect, now he thinks he knows, you know. Yeah.
yeah.
That's a great
Wow.
story. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, these things, it's so important to share these things as well. And we probably have more information to go over about that. But can you tell me a little bit about what you found most interesting about Dolores Cannon and her books? Now, everybody knows Dolores Cannon and how absolutely fascinating. I came into this on following Dolores Cannon and came in that way. Before, along my journey, I found her, and then she led me to other. And what I mean by her is her work, and this led me on to other means of examining the potential of your mind and being able to access different realms in different time and different lifetimes. So this really expanded my awareness with her,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
love that you reviewed some of her books.
Well,
So
yeah, I'm glad you asked about that. Dolores Cannon's like the gateway drug, you know. She really is for a lot of people. And it's interesting because I heard her name, I heard her work referenced for decades. And my library would never carry something like that, small town, you know. I never pursued it. But then when I found she was on YouTube, I tried to watch a couple of her presentations, and I didn't connect with them, and I just sort of brushed it off and moved on. Somebody begged me to cover one of her books
oh
on my Saturday book, you know. And I thought, well, you know, why not? What? No harm. And I think it might have been Jesus and the Essenes. And I'm
yeah,
always a little conflicted about official religion, you know, so because that's a particular issue of mine. So I was a bit reluctant. And then I thought, you know, people want to hear it. Why don't I do it? I need to read something of hers. What I found about her was, first of all, she really is a gateway drug. She's a great entree into the concepts of living eternally, of past lives, of your soul reincarnating, of the kinds of lessons that you can learn between lives. I like history, so it's always fun to read descriptions of what life was like in the past. I think that keeps people involved. I don't appreciate her always trying to mold everything into the context, the narrow context of Arkansas Christianity. Sometimes that rubs me the wrong way, but I appreciate so much a lot of what she did. I'm willing to overlook it. But I really have loved her books. One of the things about them that's so fantastic is they increase in sophistication gradually, chronologically. So if you start chronologically and read her earlier books, these ideas are just teased. And then you come to the next book and they're elaborated on. And by the time you get to her last books, there's this whole worldview that you feel like you bought into. It's like, whoa, how did that happen? So yeah, for many, many reasons, I really appreciate her work.
Yeah. Yeah. She was definitely a catalyst for me. And I used to say affirmations on my way into work, and I have like a 25-minute drive. And I would say, I'm grateful for my brand new car. I didn't have a brand new car. I'm grateful for my job that I love. I didn't love my job. I would say all these things, affirmations, and thank you. And I have the most wonderful, and thank you very much. I'm happy, fit and thin, happy, healthy, fit and thin. I would say all these things, and I would get in the car, and, because you're rushing and you're going and there's all these cars, and you just say them, and you would say them out loud. And one day I was saying my affirmations, like maybe, 2 months into it or something, and you really get into a routine. And all of a sudden I said Dolores Cannon instead of my affirmation. And I went, what just came out of my mouth? What did I just say?
Now, did you know about her? I mean, you knew she
Yes,
existed.
yes.
Okay.
I knew of her. I wasn't reading her books but I knew of her. And when I was saying my affirmations, just as easy as I was saying, it's that mindless, it's that repetition, it's that, and I was saying these things, and instead of saying my affirmation, her name came flying out. And I was like, okay, she's here. She's playing with me. I know that this was after her death, obviously, but I felt like this connection, and I felt like her, like nudging me or escorting me or nudging me forward.
Yeah.
I just and it was only that little moment. It was only that experience, but it was something that I know that I didn't say, that came out of my mouth. And the only thing I have to compare it to is when I am connecting with then I'm doing mediumship, and I'm connecting to somebody's loved one on the other side, and they'll say something, they'll be telling them a message, and the words coming out of my mouth are something I've never said before in my life, that I would never know these. I would never say that, and I would never have that phrase, like somebody said, I found my salvation. I'm like, I've never said the word salvation in like 20 years, and just certain things that come through my mouth. And that's the only thing I have to. So perhaps she was, I don't know, maybe it was my mediumship skills. Maybe it was her coming around and just nudging me, because I do admire her, and I had studied her work previous to that. But for her to come through like that was really, it was startling and monumental all at the same time.
Well, it's a validation, right? It's a validation of a lot of things. And somebody, it doesn't have to be her, somebody was nudging you. Yeah. That's so interesting. So don't you think sometimes when you have a Freudian slip, it's not really,
Sure.
not really a Freudian slip? Yeah,
Right?
I have a propensity for doing things like that. And it can be embarrassing, because you can say something that you might have been thinking of that you didn't intend to say, but
Wow.
you know,
Yeah.
but I've said some strange things that I wonder. Well, people will ask me questions here on my channel, and I'll say things, and then I'll think, oh, where did I come up with that? That's interesting. Not that I don't believe it, but I wouldn't have anticipated articulating it quite that clearly. And,
Mm-hmm.
always there's influence around us.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for that. And so um, with Dolores Cannon, do you feel, did you read any of her Convoluted Universe books?
All of them.
Oh, geez. Wow.
Yeah. Went
Do
through the
you
whole
feel
series.
transported and have a new
She talked about some things that really challenged me, things like AI with a soul, or machinery with a soul that's able to communicate across time, or the concept of walk-ins, the concept
Mhm.
of well, one of the things that she talked about that I had not really thought about, I don't always put two and two together, but it sounded right immediately, was the notion that, and the Jewish religion actually believes this, that when you are pregnant, there's a soul kind of hovering around waiting to be born, but it's one of these things that's like trying to catch a bus, and it's the right bus to the right direction with the right driver, but if the connection doesn't work out, there'll be another bus. So the soul is in and out and in and out in utero, and some women would say that they have felt that, right? And then when the baby is born, as in the Jewish religion, they believe that the spirit enters the body at birth. And then when the baby takes the first breath, that sort of seals the deal, right? But it's not entirely true. According to Dolores Cannon, baby souls tend to be kind of fluid. They kind of come and go for a while. As the brain develops, they get bored. And, all the baby does is sleep because it's developing neurologically. And that's kind of, nothing to do. And so they come back and forward. And sometimes they decide, oh, I'm not sure I made the right decision about this family or whatever. And then they don't come back. And that was one of the explanations for crib death. And I thought, oh, wow, I would not have thought of that. I don't think it wouldn't have occurred to me that it was actually a decision of the baby's soul. But I find that comforting. I don't know, I find that very comforting. I find her whole concept of what happens with infant development and the soul really comforting.
Mhm. Did you see the movie? It was an animated movie. It was called, I think it was called The Soul or something, Soul Man or something. It was about a saxophone player, and it was a animated film, and they had the souls in little white blobs bobbing around up on the clouds, and the souls were sort of looking down in a well in the clouds and looking down and saying that they want to go down into this family or go down into this family. It was really amazing movie. It was had it told it gave a lot of that information and explained a lot of that information in an easy to understand format. I thought it was interesting, and a lot of the things that I saw in that movie were rang true for me, and almost like I remembered it. It was.
Yeah. Weird how things like that present themselves, huh? That's
Mhm.
very weird. It's almost because it's without the trappings of judgment that a lot of religious belief comes with. This isn't happening because you're being punished. It's not happening because you're being rewarded. It's happening because of a much larger concept. And
Yeah.
that kind of knowledge, I think it probably is innate in all of us, but we forget immediately. And you're remembering, it sounds familiar when you hear it.
Yeah. I had a client that was recently married, and they were trying to get pregnant. And she says, can you tell me, when am I going to get pregnant next month? Or is it going to be next month? Or, when am I going to get pregnant? And I said, well, I'm not sure I can tell you when you're going to get pregnant, but I can tune into the spirit guides and see what information is important for you to know around this situation. So I closed my eyes and I asked my spirit guides, and what my spirit guides showed me is that there is a soul especially meant for her and her family. And there is a soul on the other side that is waiting for the exact alignment, whether it's an astrological alignment, whether it's an energetic alignment. And they're telling me, they showed me that the soul was like, you know how double Dutch when you go like this and you have to like
Yes,
go like
yes,
this
yeah. You're
to
getting ready to
win,
jump in. Yeah,
and
yeah,
you have to like get the rhythm and then you get to jump in.
yeah,
This is what the soul is doing on the other side, waiting
yeah,
to jump in at the precise moment. And when they told me that it was according to the astrological signs, I mean, the moment and the minute that we're born tells so much about us
yeah,
and our lifetimes. I thought it was absolutely fascinating. And it gave her such relief that it wasn't her, that it wasn't meant to be, and that it was nobody's fault, that it was just the timing for the baby, and the baby was waiting to come in. And she had such a relief and such a peace of mind about it instead of being worried each and every time, you know. And I just love the way that it helped her to feel a little more at ease and a little more calm, and gain this understanding, that perspective is so healing. It just changed her oh so little so that she wasn't so anxious about it. And I did find out later that she was pregnant and is a successful mother. And I just was just over the moon because I had no idea. I mean, I can't tell you when you're going to get pregnant. I'd love
yeah.
to, you know, tell you the lottery numbers, but I can ask my spirit guides for information that is important for her to know, for them to know, for anybody to know. So I thought that was interesting
That's
that
yeah.
you said that about Dolores Cannon.
I would be so interested for you to ask her if you ever get the opportunity. When the baby was born, the moment that they locked eyes, did she recognize that
I
soul?
know.
You know? Yeah, you know what I'm saying, right? Yeah. It's a
Yeah,
moment of recognition. It's astounding, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It is. It is. I've had that with my niece. I recognize my grandmother. Well, it's my niece's daughter, and she was a baby laying on my niece's arm shoulder, and I looked at her. I'm like, "Hello," and I looked in her eyes, and I'm like, "Woo, that's my grandmom in there." I'm like, I knew it was her. Yeah, it was a
When my
reincarnation.
when my oldest daughter was born, so you know, she's sitting on my chest, and my husband and I are standing there looking at her, and we looked at her and we looked at each other, and we both went, "Oh my God, she's 99 years old." It was just the I'm getting chills. We both at the same time. It was like, oh, this is an old soul, and she is. She, you know, she thinks she knows everything, and she probably does. She's an old soul. It's so interesting, but from the
Wow.
moment of birth, she was that way.
You had that
Uh,
impression.
oh yeah,
That's
yeah.
amazing. And the things that we just dismiss or forget, you know, we really do have a lot more clues and hints than we realize. So the next book that I wanted to talk to you about is something that really affected me emotionally. I knew absolutely nothing about this person, and so you introduced me to her, and you throughout the book said, remember when, and was just past where I would remember that. You know, I'm just out of that. Probably not by much, but Dorothy Kilgallen, and that whole story, and her personality, and her strength, her resilience, her fortitude, her awareness, her bravery, her just it was fascinating, and she was so intelligent, and I just absolutely loved the delivery that you gave, the way that you articulated and had asides of, well, you know, and just you filled me with so much emotion, so much information and
Oh,
awareness. I was really connected.
oh,
You have no idea the impact and the information. I felt like I was there with her. I felt like I understood. I mean, obviously, I didn't read the book. I could always read the book, but the way that you shared that, and then you also had Sarah Jordan on to talk about it as well. And she is fascinating. And then her father, Sarah's father,
I
I
know.
was,
I
uh,
wish he'd hurry up and get that book published because I really want to cover his book and talk to him. But were you struck by Sarah's similarity in appearance to Dorothy
Yeah.
Kilgallen.
Yeah.
It gave me chills. I could not believe it. She's coming back. She's coming back in a couple of weeks. October is National Book Month.
Oh,
So I've got some authors and struggling would-be authors and journalists and librarian we both know well, to come and talk once a week. We're going to do a little thing on National Book Month because I'm in deep mourning for the future of books. It doesn't look good.
aw.
So happy to hear you like that book. Dorothy Kilgallen always fascinated me. And when I saw this book, I was like, oh, I have to read this. And then it was just such a dense book because it was a mystery inside of a mystery. There was her death. And then there was the Kennedy assassination and a little bit of Marilyn Monroe too, which I had to gloss over that because there's just so much, you know. But boy, talk about fascinating person, so multi-layered, and she was really smart. And she had a very strong personality to overcome the misogyny of the time and the misogyny of her profession. It's terrible. And then she was faced with so many challenges. You know, her husband was probably bisexual. There's still question about that. But as, you know, this good little Catholic girl, this was something new to her. So she was challenged to face that whole aspect of society and humanity that she'd never dealt with. And then having the temerity to just trot off to these big crime cases and just solve them, you know, just incredible to me. Really admired her.
Yeah, I think she was divinely guided, and I think that there was maybe a spirit that was also encouraging her because there was this insistence and this drive that I find familiar, and that perhaps there was just another reason for her to be trying to figure all this out, and for you to introduce her to me in such a beautiful manner, and the way that you synopsize, but also your passion, your enthusiasm, and your asides. I thought that it was so beautiful, and I trust you. I've been listening to you in your book synopsis for years, and I opened up my heart and took down all of my barriers or boundaries or guards, because I trust you that you're not going to startle me, or not startle me, but you're not going to say anything that is going to be harmful to me. And that was really well, sometimes I don't want to read a book because I don't want to hear the terrible stuff, or I want to skip over the.
Yeah, I know a lot of people will skip a book if they know that there's gore in it or graphic descriptions of something. And that's not usually what attracts me to a book. You know, I'm usually more attracted to a book because of the bigger ideas. I did one book. It was really a hard book to do, and I debated doing it. And then I thought, no, it's an important message. It was called Kings, Conquerors, and Psychopaths. And it's the history of human dictatorships, authoritarianism, the rise and fall of populations. And it goes into details about what these nut jobs over time did. Alexander the Great, not so great, and it talks about all these guys, and the guy that beheaded 4,000 men in one day, just, personally did that. And many, many stories like that. And I tried hard not to dwell on the gore of it. But the message of the book was that throughout human history, psychopaths have managed to weasel their way into power and control. And we struggle mightily against that. The experiment of democracy in the United States was a huge effort against that. And unfortunately, what usually happens is our tenacity and our resilience wears out, and we fall prey to the next rising set of psychopaths. And the next rising set of psychopaths, according to the author, is corporations, that they're going to be running. And guess what J.D. Vance's backers want to do? He's gotten money from Silicon Valley. Peter Thiel gave him millions and millions. And their goal is to replace democracy with a monarchy But the monarch will be a CEO. It'll be run like a corporation. And they're not kidding. They have gone very far in the city of San Francisco to turning it into a model of that. And they're slowly taking over the government of San Francisco with that in mind. It's insane. You know, it is insane. But it's just the next in a long historical pattern of psychopathy that dominates over and over and over. So we'll have to start all over, like we talked about earlier, you know, that spiral, that increasing spiral of evolution. We just have to be determined and continue. And, you know, that's why we're here. We're here to remind people that, yeah, you know, I think it's important that people don't turn away. I think it's really important that we keep in our mind and in the front of our vision, this is what's being done. This is why it's bad, because it reminds you of who you are and what's good. And now we have to do something. But it's like, I always say, it's like AA. First, you have to admit you have a problem. And if you can't articulate the problem, you're not going to be able to succeed. And that's, I think, where we get hung up, because people are so desirous of a good outcome that they just can't look, you know. And I understand. That's my job. It's hard.
Yeah, no, I definitely, I understand. And I thank you for doing that book as well. And it's the information that you share and the way that you share it and the caring and the authenticity and the passion. You have such passion in everything that you do. You have purpose, you have passion. You teach us so much about ourselves that you don't, I'm not sure that you realize that what you do for so many of us. And I just want to, it's really a blessing. And I absolutely adore you. And I think that you're extremely intelligent and very, very giving, and it's just so articulate. I can just go on forever. I really enjoy being in your presence and learning from you. The way that you share the information that you have inside is very unique and very much appreciated.
Well, I'm overwhelmed. I'm squirming here. I'm so embarrassed. Thank you. It's really kind of you. I just go into this because I just want people to hear. Listen to what I read. This is just unbelievable, you know. Thank you. That's very kind of you to say. It validates that people really are interested, and that makes me feel good. Because, you know, I'll do a book and 100 people will listen to the video, and I'll think, oh my God. And I often think, why am I doing this? You know, but people seem to be responding more. It's cyclical. You know, I'll hit on a series of books that really appeal to people, and then I'll find a book I really like, and people are just, oh, I'll come back next week. But they come back, so that's good too, you know. I take suggestions.
Pardon?
I take suggestions.
Okay, good. Wow.
Oh, I have done a lot of books people have suggested.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, lovely. Well, I'll keep that in mind. Well, I really do also, just in ending, because I know we're a little bit over the hour here, but I just wanted to mention that your collaboration with Deborah Lupien is bar none. I've never seen anything like that. And I was like, what? What's Helen doing? Who's she with? Who's that Deborah? Oh my gosh, she's doing channeling with her. And you are just like, matter of fact, doing all these questions, talking to the person back in history, as if, and your participation in it, allowing Deborah to do what she does, and the collaboration and the trust that you two have with one another is amazing. Just one of a kind. Nobody's ever done that before.
Well, you know, I met Deborah through John of Aquarian Diary. I don't know if that rings a bell. John is from Nova Scotia, and he does astrology. And he's just this really intelligent, really thoughtful person who spent many, many years sort of in a monastic life almost, you know, just on a journey of learning. And I don't know how I found him, but he's come and had conversations with me. And he mentioned that he had discovered Deborah and thought she was really interesting, her delivery and everything. So I thought, I don't know, channeling. I'm not sure what I think about that, but I'll get in touch with her and we'll find out, you know. And it's been such an interesting thing. And one of the factors that I find very persuasive is that when Deborah presents information that she channels, it always seems to be in agreement with the time period and the kind of person, the prevailing attitudes of that time. You know, it's not like Deborah just decided, well, I'm going to try and fake a conversation with Thomas Jefferson. No, it's not like that. And I find that very validating and really interesting. And why wouldn't we be able to contact souls that have gone before us? If we're not getting the messages we need from their writing and their deeds, let's just go to the source. You know, I think that's a great idea. No, it's fun. Thank you. I'm glad you like that. That's great.
Oh my gosh, I certainly do. I think I did know Deborah, or I was was aware of her channel previously, and her but when she was with you, I was like, oh my gosh, this is brilliant. And as a psychic medium, sometimes it is really important to have people ask the appropriate questions in order for us to go, because it's really hard. I don't know if you notice when watching others, I don't know if you watch others, but it's really hard forming the question when you want the answer. But if somebody else asks you a question, it's almost like you're informing the spirit guides or the spirit that you're connecting, and then it comes back out with less it just is a more clear channel. It's a clear message coming through. I know when people ask me questions that I answer and I'm like, whoa, that answer was something I never even expected. And I'm like, that was a really good question because of the way that they posed it or what they said or what they wanted to know. I would have never thought to ask that. And it's something new for me. So it's new for me. I have no idea what information is coming through. It's a little more pure for me, and I'm allow myself to open up to what comes through. And it's really a beautiful blend of your ability to ask amazing questions and her ability to channel and to provide the information back. It's really an amazing thing to watch. And I think that you two are fabulous together.
Oh, so. Thank you. Well, you know, I'm nosy. And haven't you ever read about somebody's life and you've thought, I wonder why they did that. What were they thinking? You know? So yeah, I spend a lot of time wondering what motivates other people. It's just endlessly fascinating. So yeah, thank you. It's great.
Yeah, human behavior has always been made me curious for sure. Yeah.
I can hardly figure out why I do the things I do. So why would we be able to understand other people? I don't know.
Well, thank you so very much for coming on and sharing all of your wisdom and your opinions and your experiences and a little bit more about yourself, Helen. It's been a wonderful hour together with you. Is there anything that you feel is important to say that I may not have asked you today?
Yes, I just wanted to clear something up. I am not an interviewer. I have no understanding of journalism. I just have a chat with people, and I feel calling my conversations interviews is giving them way too much credit. It's just conversations. Because one of the things that I've noticed is when I'll get somebody that we're really having an exchange, we're having a give and take, and we're just really getting into a conversation, people will say, well, you guys are interrupting each other. You have to let your guests just speak. Well, this is not CNN. This is not, I have questions and I want sound bites. It's not like that. This is the energy of a normal human conversation. And it's what we all do when we're sitting around with friends talking. If you've ever heard a room full of people talking, it's bedlam, right? It's chaos. And that's the way I prefer to keep it because it's more genuine and you get more insight that way because people will just blurt things out. You know, it's great. It's fun and I enjoy it. And thank you for flattering me by calling it an interview, but really it's just a chat, a friendly chat. You know?
It's beautifully done, and you know, you do it with such kindness and respect, And it's a beautiful way of gathering information about different people. And then you have, your regulars, which we all love, with Denise and Gerald and Nate and Ramon as a new one. And I'm sure he's going to be a regular, and Deborah for sure. Pardon?
Carrie O'Donnell.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
We
Carrie.
trade off. You don't see either one of us a lot on each other's channel because we trade off. So we try to do it once a month. So once a month I'm on hers, and then vice versa. So it seems not that often, but actually we get together more often than that. Yeah.
Mhm.
Carrie and I were also separated at birth. It's creepy. Yeah. I've met an awful lot of people. I think I come from a much larger family than I realize. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, and this large family that we have here with all of our
That's what I mean.
subscribers and supporters,
Yeah.
it's really just beautiful. Well, thank you very much, Helen. Enjoy your evening, and please do. I'd like to do this again together, and maybe we can think up something that we can, have a little exchange or a little mediumship if you'd like, or some questions for me that I might be able to explore.
I have an idea. So we'll talk.
And I'll think of a book for you. How's that?
Excellent. So thank you very much for having me. This was really, really fun. I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you, Jean. And I learned something. So thank you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye now.
Thank you, everybody.